The morning sunlight streaming through the window brightly illuminated Amy Collins' spacious office. From the window of Bradford real estate law firm, Amy gazed at the cityscape that her grandmother Dorothy had carefully acquired piece by piece. On Amy's desk sat stacks of contracts and land deeds, and beside them was a photograph of her grandmother. "The deadline is tomorrow, so please review these by the end of today," said Jennifer, her secretary, as she knocked on the door and handed over a new stack of documents. Amy smiled and nodded, beginning to review the papers. Her ability to decipher complex real estate law clauses commanded respect within the law firm. Her career as an attorney was flourishing, and she handled all legal matters related to the real estate business that was her grandmother's legacy. "By the way, you should leave early today. It's Lindsay's birthday party, isn't it?" Jennifer said. Amy's face tensed for a moment, but she quickly composed herself. "Yes, that's right." Left alone in her office, Amy sighed deeply. Thinking about her sister Lindsay's birthday party stirred up complicated emotions. Since childhood, Lindsay had been the apple of their mother Martha's eye. Lindsay's wishes were always granted, her mistakes forgiven, and she was always at the center of the family. Amy looked at the message displayed on her cell phone screen from her mother. "There will be a special announcement tonight, so don't be late. Come at 7 o'clock sharp." A special announcement. Feeling anxious, Amy picked up her grandmother's photograph. "Grandma, are you watching over me today too?" Dorothy Bradford was the founder of the family mansion and real estate business. Amy deeply respected her grandmother, who had started a business as a woman in a man's world and made it successful. Warm memories of her grandmother, who had passed away 2 years ago, spread through Amy's heart. "Amy is the one with talent," her grandmother often said. "You have the same eyes as me. Eyes that can see the value of land and discern the essence of people." After her grandmother's death, the management of the family assets passed to her mother, Martha. Her strict mother was harsh with Amy but indulgent with Lindsay. While Amy graduated from law school and obtained her attorney's license through her own efforts, Lindsay had dropped out of college and lived a luxurious life dependent on her mother's wallet. The office phone rang, pulling Amy from her thoughts. "Amy?" It was her mother's voice. "All the preparations for the party are complete. I've planned something special for Lindsay. Tonight is an important night for our family." "I understand. I'll be there on time," Amy answered flatly. After hanging up, Amy opened her desk drawer and took out an old envelope she had kept there. It was something her grandmother had handed to her just before she passed away. "Open it when the time comes," her grandmother had said. Amy had not yet opened the envelope. She had a feeling that she should take it with her today. She put it in her bag and decided to go home to prepare for the party. Standing in front of the mirror, Amy studied her reflection. Her face bore a resemblance to her grandmother's. The same blue eyes, the same determined expression. Tonight, however, that expression was tinged with anxiety. "I must stay calm, no matter what happens," she told herself. As Amy was slipping into her dress, Lindsay was laughing on the phone with her mother. "So, you haven't told Big Sister anything, right?" Lindsay's voice was filled with joy and anticipation. "I can't wait for tonight." At Martha's mansion, the staff were busy with last-minute preparations. Martha smiled with satisfaction as she looked at the small stage set up for the special announcement. The grand hall was adorned with luxurious decorations, a champagne tower stood in the center, and a live jazz band played elegant music. Lindsay's birthday party was just like her personality, flashy, extravagant, and calculated to draw attention. Amy arrived precisely on time, dressed in a modest navy blue dress, and quietly entered the venue. Among the many guests already filling the hall, she felt like an outsider. "Amy, you finally made it," Martha approached, wearing a glamorous emerald green dress. There was joy in her mother's eyes, but Amy instinctively understood that it wasn't joy at seeing her. "I'm not late." "I'm right on time," Amy replied calmly. "Yes, that's right. Just like you, precise and predictable, Martha said. Go see Lindsay and give her your congratulations before everyone gathers. Lindsay was on the other side of the room, surrounded by friends. Dressed in a bright red dress, she was laughing loudly and behaving like a queen. When she spotted Amy, she waved her hand with exaggerated enthusiasm. You came. Lindsay left her friends and approached Amy, giving her a light hug. What do you think? Isn't it amazing? Mom arranged everything. Happy birthday, Lindsay, Amy said in a composed voice. It's a lovely party. Isn't it? Lindsay smiled with satisfaction. Tonight is special. Mom is going to make a big announcement. She continued in a lowered voice, I already know what it is, but I have to keep quiet. You're going to be surprised though. There was a spiteful gleam of pleasure in Lindsay's eyes. Amy felt anxiety spreading in her chest, but tried not to show it in her expression. As time passed, the room became increasingly lively. Family friends, acquaintances, and business partners of the Bradford family arrived one after another, presenting gifts to Lindsay. Amy stood quietly at the edge with a champagne glass in hand, observing. Just then, the sound of a glass being struck rang through the room. Martha stood on the stage, microphone in hand. Thank you all for gathering here tonight, Martha's voice echoed throughout the room. Tonight, we're celebrating the birthday of my beloved daughter, Lindsay. Martha extended her hand toward Lindsay, beckoning her to come up on stage. Lindsay let out a delighted little shriek and bounded onto the stage. My beautiful daughter, Martha took Lindsay's hand and said proudly. You have always been my joy and my pride. Amy felt those words resonate as if she didn't exist. She, too, was this woman's daughter, but Martha's words completely excluded her. Among the guests, some showed uncomfortable expressions, while others looked at Amy with sympathetic eyes. Now, tonight is more than just a birthday celebration, Martha continued. Today, I want to announce an important decision in front of all of you. The room fell silent, and all eyes focused on Martha and Lindsay. Amy felt intuitively that something was about to happen. She remembered her grandmother's envelope that she had brought in her bag. For my only daughter, whom I'm proud of, Martha continued without even glancing at Amy, I've prepared the best birthday present. There was a moment's pause. Amy held her breath. All of my inheritance. A murmur arose from the room. Lindsay jumped with wild delight and hugged Martha. Amy stood frozen. It took her a few seconds to understand the meaning of her mother's words. Martha continued, I have designated Lindsay as the sole heir to my fortune and Bradford real estate. The documents have already been formally prepared and signed. Applause began to break out. At first it was hesitant, but as Lindsay's friends enthusiastically started clapping, it gradually grew louder. Lindsay walked to the edge of the stage and smiled proudly at the audience. Then her eyes found Amy. Sorry, Lindsay said with a malicious smirk. But Mom chose me. Those words had an ironic ring in the now quiet room. Amy felt the blood drain from her face. She was experiencing the most humiliating moment of her life. However, she tried to maintain her composure as an attorney. Martha nodded with satisfaction and put her arm around Lindsay's shoulders. From now on, the future of the Bradford family will be entrusted to the hands of my true successor. Amy set down her glass and quietly left the venue. Some longtime family friends who noticed her departure gave her looks of sympathy. Margaret, an old friend of Dorothy's, gently gripped Amy's arm and whispered, Dorothy wouldn't have wanted this. Amy said nothing, just nodded. Outside the venue, the cool night air caressed her heated cheeks. Amy took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. In her bag, her grandmother's envelope seemed to radiate a presence with its weight. Inside the party venue, after the initial shock had passed, noisy conversations resumed among the guests. Many expressed surprise, and some questioned Martha's decision. Amy has always worked for the family business. Dorothy always valued Amy highly. This is wrong. But such voices gradually diminished, and the party continued as boisterously as before. Lindsay was surrounded by friends, eagerly talking about her new wealth and power, making plans about what she would do. Martha, with an expensive champagne glass in hand, gazed with satisfaction at the results of her decision. 3 days after the party, Amy was immersed in work. She was trying to wash away the memory of that humiliating night by concentrating on her duties at the law firm. However, after a meeting with a client, she needed to stop by the main office of Bradford Real Estate. Amy paused in front of her mother's office. The room visible through the glass was empty. She had intended only to deliver some documents, but knowing her mother was out, she felt somewhat relieved. Martha is at a board meeting. She won't be back for another hour, said Helen, the longtime secretary. Amy nodded and entered the office to place the documents on her mother's desk. At that moment, her eyes caught an unfamiliar file. It was labeled Dorothy Estate Asset Transfer. Amy checked her surroundings and reached for the file. Inside were legal documents, records of bank transactions, and a note that read Security Box Number 247, First National Bank. What concerned her even more was a scribbled note in red pen that said, Disposal of original documents completed. She quickly photographed the contents of the file with her cell phone and returned it to its original place. Something felt wrong. Why had she never seen these documents regarding her grandmother's estate? Amy, what are you doing? Turning around, she saw Robert Harris, her mother's colleague, standing there. Just dropping off some papers for Mother, Amy replied calmly, showing the documents she had brought to the desk. Martha has been busy lately with the procedures for Lindsay's inheritance, Robert said. It was surprising that she inherited everything. Dorothy. He cut himself off. Dorothy what? Amy asked. Nothing. Robert quickly changed the subject, saying, Lindsay doesn't have any business experience, so it must be difficult. Leaving the office, Amy's chest was swirling with even more questions. That night, as Amy was about to open her grandmother's envelope in her apartment, the phone rang. It was from Lindsay. Lindsay's voice lacked its usual arrogance, instead, it sounded anxious. Hey, does Mom have any of Grandma's old photos? Or any old documents? Why so suddenly? Amy was cautious. No, it's nothing. Just checking, Lindsay's voice tried to sound cheerful, but couldn't hide her tension. And, well, about the night of the party, that might have been a bit too much, I guess. Amy remained silent. You know, it was all Mom's plan. I didn't want to see your hurt face, Lindsay said hurriedly. But we're sisters, right? Can't we get along like before? Lindsay, what happened? Why so suddenly? Nothing. I was just thinking a bit. That's all. Lindsay paused briefly before continuing. By the way, have you ever seen Grandma's will? Amy's wariness intensified. No. Why do you ask? It's nothing. Good night, big sister. After the call ended, Amy reflected on this strange conversation. It was clear that Lindsay was looking for something. And it was related to their grandmother's will. She finally opened her grandmother's envelope. Inside was a single note written in her grandmother's handwriting, The truth is in my book. The next day, Amy headed to the old house where her grandmother had lived before she died. The house was still family property and used occasionally. As she opened the front door, the familiar scent of wood and old books greeted her. On her way to her grandmother's study, Amy recalled a memory. After her grandmother's death, her mother had hastily changed lawyers. Jonathan Morris, who had been the family's legal advisor until then, was suddenly dismissed, and they switched to a new law firm. Entering the study, she was greeted by a wall full of bookshelves. The truth is in my book, but which book? Her grandmother was a literature enthusiast and owned hundreds of books. Amy sat at her grandmother's desk and thought deeply. Special moments with her, secret places they shared, special books. Then her eyes lit up. Of course. She quickly stood up and headed to the section with legal books. There was a Principles of Real Estate Law, which her grandmother had always kept close at hand. Amy and her grandmother had read this book together and had their first conversations about law. Taking the book in hand, as soon as she opened it, a folded paper fell out. It was written in her grandmother's handwriting, "My true will is under the floor." Confused but determined, Amy began examining the floor beneath her grandmother's desk. After searching for a while, she noticed that one floorboard was slightly raised compared to the others. Carefully lifting it, she discovered a small safe. "Where's the key?" Amy whispered. She remembered her grandmother's words again. "Always keep important things close to your heart," that was something her grandmother often said. Suddenly, Amy remembered something. Her grandmother's locket. The heart-shaped locket she always wore around her neck. After her grandmother's death, it was given to Amy, but she had never opened it. Rushing back home, Amy took the locket from her jewelry box. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside, as she had expected, was a small key. The next day, Amy returned to her grandmother's house and opened the safe. Inside was a securely sealed envelope labeled, "My last and true will." She opened the envelope and began reading the document inside. It was a formal will with her grandmother's signature and the signatures of 2 witnesses. The date was 2 weeks before her grandmother's death. It clearly stated, "I, Dorothy Elizabeth Bradford, being of sound mind, hereby declare that I bequeath all my property, real estate business, and all shares of the company bearing my name to my beloved granddaughter, Amy Collins. She understands my passion and principles and has the wisdom and strength to continue my life's work." Amy was speechless. This was her grandmother's true wish. But why wasn't it formally executed? Further examining the documents, she found another envelope. It contained a letter from her grandmother to Amy. "Dear Amy, if you are reading this letter, something bad has happened. I have named you as the sole heir to the Bradford family. However, I fear that Martha will not accept my decision. She loves Lindsay too much to the point of losing her reason. You have always been strong and wise. That's why I chose you. You have the power to find the truth and correct it. With love, Grandma." Tears welled up in Amy's eyes. Her grandmother had trusted her. And now it was clear what had happened. Her mother had hidden her grandmother's true will and created false documents. She needed to take action. However, this would have a significant impact on the entire family. As an attorney, she had a duty to correct this injustice. But as a daughter, it meant tearing the family apart. Amy took all the documents from the safe and decided to store them in a safe place. She had not yet made a final decision. "I need time," she whispered. "Time to think about what to do." As she was about to leave the study, she heard the front door open. Someone had entered the house. "Is anyone here?" Lindsay's voice echoed. "Amy? Are you here?" Amy quickly put the documents in her bag and answered, feigning calm. "Yes, I was just looking for one of Grandma's books." Lindsay entered the study and looked at Amy suspiciously. "What book?" "Just a memento," Amy replied. "What are you doing here?" "Mom asked me to look for Grandma's photo albums," Lindsay answered, but her eyes were fixed on Amy's bag. "Did you find anything?" "Nothing special," Amy replied quietly. "Well, I'll be going now." She passed by Lindsay and left the house. Her heart was pounding. A race against time had begun. Family secrets were emerging, and if she didn't act soon, the truth might be buried forever. Amy remembered her grandmother's courage and wisdom and began thinking about her next step. The evidence she had was certainly powerful. However, she wanted more than just a legal victory. She wanted both justice and family reconciliation. But was that possible? Amy drove toward the city center, deeply contemplating. The future of the family was in her hands. 2 weeks passed. Amy had kept her grandmother's true will in a safe place and was carefully considering her next move. While drinking her morning coffee, she gasped at a headline in the business section of a news site: Bradford Real Estate, Sudden Policy Change. Lindsay was promoting a new vision, firing longtime employees, and proceeding with asset sales. The phone rang. It was Frank Wilson, the most senior employee of Bradford Real Estate. Amy, Lindsay is trying to change everything. This morning, 5 of us were fired, Frank's exhausted voice echoed. 5? Who? Me, Jenny, David, Mike, and Laura. All of us were directly hired by Dorothy. That's not all, Frank continued. She's trying to sell the riverfront property. The land Grandma spent her lifetime protecting, Amy continued. The buyer is Westside Developers. They've already announced plans to build high-rise condominiums. That afternoon, Amy visited her mother's house. Mom, do you know what Lindsay is doing? She's destroying everything Grandma protected. Martha turned from the window. She's just following her own path. Her own path? She's selling off the heart of the company. Selling important assets. You've always been independent. Lindsay is different. She needs my protection. That's no reason to hide Grandma's will, Amy said quietly. The color drained from Martha's face. What are you talking about? I know everything. Amy took copies of the documents from her bag. Grandma's true will. The fact that I am the heir. You can't prove anything. I can. Grandma foresaw what would happen. That's why she took precautions. You don't understand. Lindsay has nothing. Martha collapsed onto the sofa. That doesn't justify theft. Martha fell silent, lowering her gaze. Amy sighed deeply and left the room. The next day, Amy was sitting in the office of Jonathan Morris, the family's former legal advisor. This is an extremely serious matter, Jonathan said after finishing reading the will. Falsification of a will and fraudulent asset transfer. The phone rang. It was from Lindsay. Great news. Westside Developers doubled their offer. $45 million. Lindsay, you can't sell that property. Why not? The company is mine now. Actually, the company isn't yours, Amy said quietly. What are you talking about? There was a hint of panic in Lindsay's voice. Meet me at my office tomorrow at 2 p.m. Bring your lawyer. The next afternoon, in the conference room of Amy's office. On one side of the table sat Amy and Jonathan, on the other side sat Martha, Lindsay, and their lawyer, James Perry. Why did you call us here? Lindsay asked anxiously. To reveal the truth, Amy answered, placing a copy of her grandmother's true will on the table. James Perry picked it up and read through it. His face turned pale. This is... He stammered. Dorothy Bradford's true will, Jonathan said. It's legally valid. It's a fake. Martha shouted. We've verified with the notary and witnesses, Amy said quietly. This is genuine. So? Lindsay asked with a confused face. So, the legal heir to Bradford Real Estate is Amy, Jonathan explained. I am possible. Lindsay shouted. Mom gave it to me. Mom didn't have the right to give it to you, Amy said. What do you intend to do now? Lindsay asked, her voice mixed with anger and fear. Sue me? That's one option, Amy said. But what I really want is to protect Grandma's legacy. What do you mean? Martha finally spoke. I will take legal action. Submit the true will to the court and invalidate the fraudulent asset transfer, Amy explained. Lindsay began to cry. So I'll have nothing left? That depends on your actions, Amy said. I will regain control of the company. Reinstate all the fired employees and stop the sale of the riverfront property. And us? Martha asked. If you really want to be involved with the company, you can start by actually working and learning, Amy said. I don't intend to shut you out of the company. But there will be no more unconditional luxury. That's humiliating. Lindsay cried. Or I could take this to court, Amy said calmly. In that case, this fraud will become public. James Perry said quietly, she has a strong case. If it goes to court, we will lose. After a long silence, Martha sighed deeply. We'll do as you say, Amy. Mom. Lindsay exclaimed in surprise. Enough, Lindsay, Martha said in a tired voice. We were wrong. A week later, the court recognized Dorothy Bradford's true will and formally acknowledged Amy as the rightful heir. Martha and Lindsay stood outside the courthouse, stunned. Their luxurious life had ended overnight. What will we do now? Lindsay asked in a small voice. We'll live, Martha said. Without what we thought we were entitled to. Amy came out of the courthouse and stood before them. It's over, she said. The company is safe. Congratulations, Martha said bitterly. This isn't about winning, Amy said. It's about respecting Grandma's wishes. She took an envelope from her bag. These are keys to a new apartment. Both of you can start a new life. Lindsay looked at her in surprise. You're helping us? Why? Because we're family, Amy answered simply. Tears welled up in Martha's eyes. I wasn't fair to you. I know, Amy said. But we can't change the past. We can change the future. Will you give me a chance to work at the company? Lindsay asked. Starting from entry level, Amy said. You'll have to prove yourself. Lindsay nodded. There was a new determination in her face. The three of them descended the courthouse steps together, beginning a new chapter. In Amy's heart, sadness and victory, pain and hope mingled. But she was confident that she had made a choice her grandmother would be proud of. Justice had been served, and the family had been given a chance to heal. That was Dorothy's true legacy. 6 months later. Morning sunlight streamed into the conference room of Bradford Real Estate. Amy stood by the window, gazing at the cityscape. She remembered how her grandmother had once stood in the same spot, looking at the same view. Amy, everyone's here, Jennifer, her secretary, called out. She, along with Frank, was among the first employees reinstated by Amy immediately after Lindsay's dismissal. Amy nodded and headed to the conference room. Around the table sat the key staff of Bradford Real Estate. And there was an unexpected face as well. Lindsay. In the past 6 months, Lindsay had changed significantly. Instead of flashy dresses and expensive jewelry, she wore a simple business suit. Her expression showed seriousness rather than the arrogance of the past. Please give us the final report on the riverfront project, Amy said. Lindsay stood up and cleared her throat slightly. Yes. The first phase of the riverfront conservation project has been completed. By agreement with the city, 60% of the land will be developed as an urban park, and the remainder will be developed as eco-friendly low-rise housing. This balance respects Grandma's vision while also ensuring the company's financial stability. She caught Amy's eye for a moment and smiled slightly. The project is proceeding within budget. Amy showed a satisfied expression at Lindsay's work. Since that day, Lindsay had truly changed. She had literally started from entry level and gradually proven her worth. Now she was entrusted with small projects. After the meeting, Amy received a visitor in her office. It was Martha. I brought the reports, Martha said in a small voice. She, too, had changed. Her formerly dignified posture was gone, replaced by a softer, more humble demeanor. Martha held a limited role as a financial advisor to the company. Her experience was valuable, but Amy held all final decision-making authority. Thank you, Mom. Amy took the reports. Would you like some tea? The two sat facing each other at a small table. Lindsay is doing well, Martha said. Honestly, I didn't think she had such abilities. People can grow surprisingly well when given the opportunity, Amy replied. I didn't give you that opportunity, Martha said quietly. I was jealous that Dorothy chose you. She always said you were special. Amy stared at her mother in surprise. It was the first time Martha had spoken so honestly about her feelings. So I favored Lindsay. Because Dorothy didn't, tears glistened in Martha's eyes. I was wrong. Mom. Amy took her mother's hand. You saved this company, Martha continued. And you saved us too. When you had no obligation to. We're family, Amy said simply. That evening, Amy visited her grandmother's grave. Standing before the tombstone, she placed fresh flowers. Grandma, everything is going well, she spoke softly. The company is growing, and the riverfront is protected. Lindsay is working really hard. Can you believe it? A gentle breeze caressed her hair. From somewhere far away came the sound of birds singing. My relationship with Mom is getting better little by little. It takes time, but we're healing. Amy took a small object from her pocket. It was her grandmother's locket. Your legacy is safe. The Bradford family has begun a new chapter. This time, a chapter based on honesty and respect. She held the locket to her chest and closed her eyes. The wind blew again, this time a bit stronger, embracing her like her grandmother's hug. Amy smiled quietly. She felt the end of a long journey and a new beginning. Justice had been served, and the family had begun walking the path of healing. Dorothy's vision and passion now lived on in Amy. And she was ready to pass it on to the next generation. As the sun began to set, Amy left the cemetery. Her steps were firm. She walked confidently toward the future, carrying her grandmother's wisdom and strength in her heart.